Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's session, which is all about the unspoken career rules in HR and how to navigate them with confidence. So, just before we get into that, I'll just say a little bit about me. This is me having a bit of fun with AI, as you can probably see, but this is just me in a pictorial form, and then I've put a few sort of notes about who I am. So my background is predominantly HR. So I've been in HR for over 25 years. I'm a fellow. Sorry, that's kind of you can barely see that, but I am a fellow from FCIPD. I wear a number of hats, which is what I've tried to kind of capture in my picture. I've written a book on powerful career conversations. I'm an executive coach. I teach on the CIPD program and level 3 and level 5, and I also run workshops and do executive coaching on one-to-one and organizational level. So in a nutshell, that is who I am and what I do. So let's start by asking the question, and please feel free to put something in the chat as we go through so we can get a bit of interaction going. Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right in your job, wherever you're working at the moment, and you're just not feeling that you're progressing? So show of hands or something in the chat, let me know. Does that resonate with anybody? So let's check the chat. Let's see. Yes, we've had one yes so far. So do any of you feel that where you are now, you've been there a while, maybe you've been there a couple of years and you're not really progressing? Is that something that can any of you relate to that? Or is that a challenge, or is that an issue for anybody at the moment? Let's check the chat again just to see if we're getting, yeah. So we've had a few. There's someone said, yeah, they changed jobs. I mean, some of the clients that I work with, there's only so much you can change, and obviously we're going to get into details in a minute, but there's only so much you will ever be able to change, and ultimately it's for the organization, and it's knowing whether you can influence from within, whether it's time to move on. But yeah, sometimes the only way to move on is to move out. Which is unfortunate, but sometimes that's what you need to do. But hopefully, for most organizations, if they're enlightened enough and they really value you or the function that you perform, if they really value it, they will want to keep you, but they just might not know how to get the best from you. So this is all about understanding how you can play a role in trying to make sure that you are getting, you are being recognized for what you bring, and it's sort of almost twofold, because it's about you as an individual, but it is also about being a HR professional, because not all organizations, it's hard to believe, but even in the 21st century, not all organizations recognize the value that HR brings. So there is that element of not understanding the value that HR brings, but also how you as a person of color, how you make your mark within possibly a predominantly non-ethnic minority organization. So, stuck. All right. So the thing that we're going to look at today is, if you are, which is why I asked the question, I think you will find as we go through that many people are in the same position. And this session is about the things that you can do to try and move your career forward. And they're things that sometimes you probably will not find them written down anywhere. They're not things that somebody will tell you. They're things that you have to learn. Some of this, which I'm going to share with you, are things that I've learned from my own personal experience, and some of it are things that I've learned from working with different clients who've experienced some of these challenges. So the reality of career progression in HR is it is not capability driven when you get to a certain point. So depending on where you sit as a HR professional, there comes a point when it's not so much about the fact that you have you're a CIPD qualified person, or you have knowledge of employment law or whatever it might be. It's not so much about that. What people are looking for is something a bit different once you get to a certain point. And I remember years ago, I had this boss, and something that he said to me was, Yvonne, you've got to this level, you're a senior manager in this organization, and what we're not looking anymore at testing whether you're competent at HR. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is your political nous. And it took me a while to understand that, because I was thinking, the whole time I was still operating with the mindset that as long as I'm competent and I know my craft, I will progress. And actually, when you get to a certain point, when you become a senior manager and above, so sort of middle, either sort of depending on the kind of role that your organization, it might be something like senior HRBP, it might be assistant HRBP, that kind of level and above, anything that goes above that. So if you're moving into head of HR, assistant director, those kind of roles, when you move into those roles, you have to change your mindset, because what people are looking for is different. So at that point, what they're looking for is visibility. They're looking for you to be visible. They're looking for you to have perception. So you need to be able to read the room. You need to be able to understand who's in that room. Who do you need to engage with? And you need to know how to influence. These are the kinds of things that people are starting to look for, which is a big shift from where you would have been as you were working through your career. When you're in more junior roles, it doesn't matter as much. People are looking for you to be competent and to be able to do the operational stuff. But as you move up, as I said before, that kind of mindset starts to think. So being good at your job is great, but it's not enough if you are not seen as being ready to make that next move. So why this matters? It matters for us as ethnic minorities in particular, because for most of us, we don't always have access to informal networks. So a lot of colleagues, you will find, maybe they have access to informal networks. So they meet outside of work, they meet after work, they meet at weekends, depending on the kind of relationships and kind of cliques that may have formed in that organization. You won't necessarily even know that's happening. Things like that may be happening. And it's through those relationships that people are building. It's through those relationships that people are beginning to get themselves above the move up the ladder. So I'm sure most of you, and we've all experienced this, most of you will experience that you will go to organizations and you will see someone who's in a very senior role, and you'll be thinking to yourself, they're not particularly technically competent, but they've moved up the ladder. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Does anybody recognize, can anyone sort of think, I know certain people in some organizations. Sorry.
I think someone's not on mute. I'll look down the list and mute everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all right. Yeah. So you will find that, and so what happens is that, and especially as ethnic minority professionals, people won't tell you. People will not come to you because either they feel uncomfortable, or they don't know how to approach you, or for whatever reason. So you're not getting that kind of formal feedback. And how people are looking for potential is very different. What they're looking for is not necessarily just about, as I said before, being good at your job. What they're looking for is somebody that they feel will be a good fit. And much as we don't like to hear that, the reality is you need to be able to fit within what they're looking for to a degree. And I'll explain more about that. This isn't about you changing yourself, but it's about understanding how to navigate the system that you're in. So because nobody will tell you these rules. So it's not about changing yourself, but you need to understand the system. You need to understand who the players are. You need to understand who the influencers are. When I'm working with clients, what I often say to them is to do what I call a political map, where you look at the organization and you identify within that organization who are the people that I need to get on side with, who are going to influence and further what I need to further, who are going to give me that visibility, who are the people. And you'd be surprised, sometimes it's not necessarily your boss, it might be, but it might not necessarily be your boss. It might be a director, an operations director who has a big team. It might be the chief exec, if you have access to that person. It might be somebody at the next level down. It will vary depending on the kind of organization and culture within it. But it's understanding that, and that's what we need to get better at doing in order to really be able to navigate this maze and system that we find ourselves in. So what are the unspoken rules? The informal expectation is how we shape progression, is what shapes progression. So as I said before, it's not about being competent. Yes, you clearly need to know your stuff, but it's much more than that. What people are looking for and what you need to make sure that you are doing is you are putting yourself in a position where people can observe you, people can see what you're bringing to the table. So one of the things that I often suggest is that if you have an opportunity to appear at a leadership team, depending on where you sit, let's say you're at a business partner level, so you don't necessarily go to the senior leadership meetings. Find an opportunity, ask your manager as part of your development, you would like to come along. You're observing. It gives you access that you might ordinarily not have to a group of people who are influencers, because the senior team, that's where the influence is. So it's giving you the opportunity to have access to those group of people at that level. What you also want to try and do is find a sponsor. And what I mean by that is somebody who can be that voice for you when you're not there. So you want to have somebody who champions you, who recognizes what you bring and who can champion you. Because the closer you can get to the leadership, the more influence you start to have. And it's very subtle. It's not written down. It's not something that somebody will come and tell you or show you. It's things that you have to kind of identify yourself. So it's understanding, who do I need to get close to? Who do I need to build a relationship with, who will be able to champion my cause, who will be able to put me in front of others. So it's very important to understand. So these are the things that, as I say, they're not written down anywhere, but they are important. So because until you do them, you might be doing a whole load of things. You might be very proactive in delivering, but you're invisible to people. They don't see you. They don't understand the value that you bring. So, and especially because we are, most of us will be ethnic minorities, we're even more invisible. So it's about how do we turn that invisibility to visibility? So that's very much an important part of what we need to do. So these are just some things to kind of get you thinking about what you can do and how this kind of brings it to life a little bit. So visibility drives opportunity. As I said, if people don't know you, they don't know you, who you are, they're never going to champion you. Why would they? They don't know who you are. They don't know what you bring. They don't know how you impact. So being good at your job is great. It's important. It helps. But to move forward, you need to be seen. You need to be known for something. What is it that you want to be known for? And you need to be memorable. So as I said, in the example I was giving earlier, where I was saying a really good way is to ask if you can observe a senior management meeting. When you're in that meeting, depending on the culture and what's being discussed, even if you make one or two contributions, especially if the subject of the people side of it is coming up, making contributions, it gets you seen. People start to see, if you're dropping one or two nuggets of your wisdom and your knowledge about the subject matter that's being discussed, people start to take notice, and then they remember you. And so these are things that we often don't necessarily realize that we need to do, but they're important. So again, as I've given examples, so it's very much about speaking up in meetings. Don't go to these meetings and sit there. Try and make sure that you are engaging and sharing insights. So it's not just about saying, oh, last week we had our turnover was XYZ, or presenting data or stats. It's about sharing insight. So it's about saying, it could be something as simple as saying, well, I know one of our competitors have just introduced XYZ and that's worked. Maybe it's something we should look at. Or I've recently identified from an article that I read that some organizations are doing XYZ and that has worked. There's a case study, or whatever it might be. But just some insights that really allow people to see that you understand that when there is a problem that the organization is grappling with, you're able to contribute to that. So it's very much about coming outside of your team. Certainly, if you want to move up, if you're looking at progression, you have to be seen outside of HR. You can no longer just sit in the HR office or in the HR box. You need to be visible across the organization. That's what gets you noticed. And the other thing to bear in mind is that influence matters more than expertise. Who are your influencers? Who are your champions? Who are the people that you're engaging with? HR is not just about the technical stuff. It's not just about the employment law. It's not just about talent development. It's not just about the bread and butter stuff. That's important. But the higher up you go, and hopefully, depending on the kind of organization you work with, you will have a team who you will hopefully recruit and develop, and they will be doing a lot of the day-to-day. Your role, or part of your role, if you're moving into a leadership position, is building relationships. It's building those relationships with people, because those people are the people who make the decisions. So the more you build those relationships, the more you're able to influence. And it's that influence that really helps to shape decisions, so that when people are thinking about things, they're looking to you. They're coming to you, they're talking to you, they're asking you questions. You're able to contribute to the discussion, and people seek out your advice beyond just the basic bread and butter HR. So it goes from really the shift that you want to be making is going from delivering HR processes to shaping business outcomes. Years ago, any of you will have done your CIPD. You will know about David Ulrich many years ago introduced the whole concept of business partnering. And although we have, in many ways, we still use that model, and there have been other iterations of it since, but the fundamental concept of it was rooted in the fact that as HR, in order to have a voice, we need to be able to contribute to the wider business. So it's about understanding the business, understanding what does this organization do? What are they grappling with? What are their challenges? If you're in the private sector, are they grappling with sales? Are they trying to increase market share? If you're in public sector, is it about reputation? Is it about cost saving? Depending on where you work, you need to understand all of those things. And then how do you, within the world of HR, how do you bring your expertise to bear? So when you're sitting and having these conversations, you're talking not just from a HR point of view, you're talking from a business point of view. So people start to see you as a peer. They start to see you as somebody who has something to bring to the table that goes beyond just, this is the HR update, this is what HR have delivered. That's important, but it's going beyond that. And progression is very much it's not a solo journey. If you really want to progress, you cannot do it on your own. You need to have these relationships, which we talked about, whether that's senior stakeholders, sponsors, and cross-functional peers. Now, some organizations have different kind of management structures. So an organization I used to work with, we had 2 tiers of management. We had the very senior team, executive team, ET, SMT, same thing. But then we had another tier, which was called the management community. And that's where all the heads of service sat. And so a big part of my role was to convene that and to run it and to talk to people. And part of that was very much coming along to those discussions or setting up those days, talking to the managers. What's the big challenge that you're struggling with? What can we do? So we would have, when we met, we used to meet once a quarter. When we met, we would run problem solving sessions, looking at the problems that the business was having. So it was not about HR specifically. We would do some things around HR, but we were also talking about what is it that what are their challenges? Because also what sometimes happens, and people don't realize, even within any organization, I might be, I don't know, head of ops, and somebody else might be head of comms or whatever. And we might be experiencing the same problem, but often you find that people don't actually they don't talk peer to peer. So it's creating that kind of environment. Part of our role could be to lead that engagement so that is happening. So using those kind of tools is a great way to be highly visible and to be as someone who is there trying to solve problems. So, and because the question that you need to ask yourself is, who speaks for you when you're not in the room? Because that's when you know that you have a voice. If you're not in the room and somebody is there in that room talking and cheering you on and championing you, that's very powerful. And it's probably one of the most powerful things, because people listen. If you've got a senior leader or influencer in the organization championing you, even when you're not in the room, that is worth much more than you being able to talk for yourself. Because it's a bit like, it's almost the same as when we want to buy something and someone recommends something, and you see an advert for something cold, you don't know the person, you don't know, and then someone else recommends someone. We often would go with the person who's recommended. That's human nature. So in the same way, when you're not in the room, you need to have somebody who's going to be your sponsor, your champion, who's going to be that voice for you, because those are the things that help to move you forward within the organization. And a lot of the time, if you're applying for a job, if you're applying for a new job, it's very much, unfortunately, and as HR professionals, you will know this, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, people are assessing you from the minute you submit your application or your CV or whatever it is. So it's very much, how do you show within your, how do you show once you're in the organization and you're starting to apply for a promotion? Let's say you come in as a business partner, your boss leaves and you're applying for the next job up, whatever that might be. How do you make sure that you are in with a better chance? So it's very much about how you can show what you've delivered beyond just, I've delivered this, but I've also helped solve a problem that the organization might be grappling with, or I've influenced, or I've supported. People want to see you as a peer, or somebody. The question that they often ask, and we don't like it, but the fact is, the question that is often asked is, can I work with this person? Can I work with this person? If people don't look at you and see you as someone that they can go to, they can confide in, they can talk to about their problems, and who will offer solutions, then you could be brilliant at your job. You could be absolutely brilliant. People don't necessarily see that. So it's very important that we understand what we bring, but we do it in a way that is subtle and really hits the mark of getting people to understand how we bring some value to the organization. So the things that people are looking for in a leader is strategic thinking. As I mentioned before, people are looking to see that you understand the organization, you understand the challenges, you understand what makes the organization tick, you understand what will make the organization better. So when you are talking, you're weaving some of those conversations into what you are sharing. They want to understand that you know how to deal with pressure. Because I don't know if any of you are working in organizations at the moment, but a lot of organizations currently, it seems that redundancies are rife. A lot of organizations are just struggling with funding because of employment law changes and all sorts of other political challenges. So for a lot of organizations, they're struggling at the moment. So for those organizations, what they want is to find someone who understands that and is able to sort of say, look, we're having to do this piece of work. How do we do it in a way that helps keep the people that we want to keep? Because even though organizations might be shrinking, ultimately they don't want to cease to exist. They will need to keep key people. And the way that they're going to do that is by having the right kind of support in place to do it. So how do you support them with that? How do you support that piece of work that they might be doing? These are the things that they're looking for. And I talked about, I didn't use the expression executive presence, but it is that whole thing around talking as a leader. You're talking about, you've probably heard the saying, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. And it's the same kind of concept with executive presence. It's very much about where do I want to be? So I'm having the conversation at the next level up from where I am. So the conversation that I'm having when I'm talking, I'm showing that I'm thinking I'm already there mentally. I just need to now get there officially through a promotion. So it's very much people want to see those kind of conversations and they want to see that kind of behavior. And these are the things that inspire confidence, that give people the sense, this is somebody that we would definitely want to have on board. A lot of times, HR, it's a fine balancing act, because as you all know, HR by nature, some of what we do, we have to be risk averse because of the employment law. We have to. So, but it's knowing when you have to stay in that safe zone and say, actually, you cannot do this unless you want to face a tribunal. Being able to know when to do that, but also knowing when you can take some very calculated risks. There are times when you might need to take a risk, but it's calculated, so it's not a random risk. You understand so if you're going to do that, this is where having the support of somebody who's going to back you is important, number one. And number two, it's very important that you know when you can take a calculated risk. It may be that you've seen another organization has done something, they've introduced, so a risk might be, to give you an example, it might be a lot of organizations are suddenly cutting back on their training budgets because money is tight. So a lot of organizations, their natural go-to is to say, well, we're going to cut back on training. Okay, that's fine. But you might be saying, well, actually, this is an opportunity. If we want to retain the best talent, we need to put more money into investment. And that's kind of, for a lot of people, they might see that as a bit of a risk. But actually, if you can show what the benefits are to the organization, and you're still spending money, you're developing your workforce, people feel secure because they know that development is happening, you are more likely to retain the sought after members of your organization than your other competitors who have automatically put a block on training. So they're not developing people. People feel insecure because they don't know what development is available to them. The job market is a bit rocky, and if they're really good, even though the market might be a bit rocky, there are still jobs out there, and for some of those people, they will leave. So that's an example of where you may take a calculated risk, say, actually, let's go against the grain, because I think this will, in the long run, will pay off. And what you don't want to do is to be seen as that person who's solid but not stretch ready. So it's always about trying to look when you're having conversations with your manager, whoever that might be. It's about where can you get more involved in something that usually would not be part of your day-to-day job. Might be something that, as I said before, it could be as simple as shadowing meetings. It could be actually being asking if you can get involved in cross-organizational projects. That is a really good one, because when you do that, it automatically gives you visibility, automatically. So getting involved in cross-organizational projects or leading organizational projects. I'm doing some work with an organization at the moment where we're doing some work around values. So we're looking at their values and we're doing that across the organization. So I've got people across the organization. I've said I want people across the organization. For those individuals, the reason that the thing that has attracted them, they're not HR, they're operational stuff, but the selling point for them was that it gives them an opportunity to say that they are working cross organizational. So they're doing something that ultimately feeds into their CV and to their own personal development. So that was the big sell for getting people. So in the same way as HR, you might ask to get involved in a project that actually it has very little to do with HR, but it is something that is important to the organization. These are things that really impress people because it shows a commitment. People see you're really looking to learn, you're looking to understand, you're looking to develop, and you're looking to really bring something to the table. So the thing to remember here is it's not about changing who you are. You are who you are. And I don't think that one thing that I think is important is that you need to remain authentic to who you are, because if you don't, sooner or later it will show. So be who you are, but in order to really progress, you also need to understand the system. You need to understand, as I said before, where is your political map? Who are the people that you need to work with? Who are the people that can influence? You can influence, or who will speak on your behalf? Who are the people that you need to get general support from? They may not be influencers, but they will be people who you can get general support from because they're your peers. And in some instances, it might involve also people who are one level below you. So, but it's understanding all these different people in the organization and where you need to feature and be part of. So it's really just about coming outside of the HR box and working cross organization wide. So I'm going to pause and ask a few questions. So which of these rules resonates most with you from your experience? So are there any of the rules that we've covered so far? We've talked about influence. We've talked about visibility. We've talked about being not playing it safe. We've talked about being somebody who can really take an element of risk, albeit calculated. Which of these would you say, is there any of them that you would say, actually, this is something I've tried? So let me check the chat and see if anybody's commented in the chat. Let's just see. Check the chat. Okay. So no one's commented yet, but I would really encourage you to think about these things, because have any of you tried in your organization to step outside of your comfort zone and ask for a stretch goal? Is that something anybody has done previously?
So I'd say for me personally, I've got a manager who is quite comfortable. She's trying to not let me reach my potential. So I've paid for some of my own training, and I've probably feel that I've gone as far as I can in this particular role. So what I've done is now I've introduced myself to the senior leadership team via LinkedIn and had
Oh,
conversation. Yeah, and now they've emailed me back about doing some corporate responsibility roles. And now I've seen another course that I want to go on, but I want them to pay for this time. So I think by building up that relationship and circumventing her, I'm more likely to get what I need, but that's what I did. I went over her and went to the senior leadership team. So that was like our director general, the director, and she was really lovely. When I messaged her, she was like, welcome aboard, welcome to the team. And yeah, my manager was like, how has this happened? Because I then asked the director, can I shadow you? So because the rapport's building, I'm just quickly going through as much as I can and seizing those opportunities. And yeah, it seems to be working.
yeah. No, that's extreme. That's a thank you for sharing that, girl. That is absolutely spot on. And sometimes you do find that the blockage comes from the person that you report to, which is unfortunate. Sometimes they feel threatened by you, or they're not confident in their own skills, or whatever it might be. But it's about trying to find ways to navigate that. And it could be there's smart things that you're doing. I think like going on LinkedIn, or even sort of saying to your manager something. If you again, it might not be relevant, but for another way that you might do it could be something as simple as introducing something like a newsletter that you're leading on, you're championing that. So your that newsletter is going out and people are seeing your contributor, or a blog if newsletters are not the thing for your organization. It could be a blog, it could be you have a HR blog, something like that. So you're getting your voice out there and people start to know you. You become known for doing whatever that is. So these are things that are really important. So it's about really trying to take yourself out of your comfort zone, because for some of us it is a challenge. We like our comfort zones. We all do. I'm as guilty of that as the next person. But sometimes we have to come out of that in order to really make sure that our voice is heard and we're visible, we're seen, and we're championed. So I just want to check and see if there's any other comments in the. So yeah, guys, if you want to say anything, please feel free either in the chat or just unmute. I'm happy to engage, because I think the more we engage, the better hopefully you will find the session. So someone has said here, I found it difficult to influence and be more visible sometimes due to the busy day-to-day demands of my role. Yes, I can understand that. So I think, yeah, it is difficult because sometimes we do get lost in the weeds. We have to do the day job. That has to happen. So, but I think it's about also saying to your, if you, again, depends on the relationship you have, but sometimes it's about finding some subtle ways. So, like I was saying, for instance, it could be, yes, you're doing the day job, but you're doing a blog, or you are, if you have team meetings, you're speaking up in team meetings, or you're speaking up in, again, different organizations have different structures, so it's difficult to give an exact example. But it's very much maybe if you have all staff meetings, it's another way. Speaking up, asking the MD or whoever it is questions, things like that. You become known for that, and people start to. I mean, you're asking, or not just asking questions necessarily, but you're contributing. You're making an observation and said, "I've thought maybe if we could look at this, or we could do." So there's little things that you can do. It might be bite size, because you are busy in the day job. But I think the thing I would say is, even if it's something small, it's very important, because at the end of the day, at the risk of sounding slightly callous, organizations will leave you behind if they feel that they need to move on. So you need to do what is right for you to make sure that you protect yourself and your career is managed. So even if it's small baby step things that you can do, I think it's really important to do them. So I think that's something that I would suggest. So yeah. So I think, yeah, and I think somebody said here, to interact with people outside your team. That is so important. When I first used to work in HR, I just spoke to my colleagues. It's so important because that's where the progression comes. So try very hard to talk to people outside of your team. So yeah, so okay, so I'm not sure what that message is. Oh, I'm getting a message to say that the meeting's come to an end. So I'm going to crack on. So yeah, so these are just some practical things. Be visible, be proactive, be a relationship builder, be ambitious, and be strategic. So this is in summary, this is a summary of things as a reminder of these are the things that are really important for you to do if you want to progress. So career progression is not accidental. It has to be navigated. I work with HR professionals and organizations navigating progression, both with teams at individual level. And sometimes it's about giving people the tools to have career conversations because we're not used to that. For many people, it's not something organizations have ever really spent time thinking about. And it's becoming more important that we start to do that. So as HR professionals, part of what I would recommend you do is to encourage your organizations to start getting the leaders to have career conversations for their staff and for you as HR professionals to have career conversations yourselves about where you want to go with your own career. So any questions?
Thanks for that, Yvonne. I found that really useful. Got lots of tips and suggestions to carry forward about doing kind of like what you said to kind of initiate the conversation. I raised a policy question just so that they could see that I was chartered member and just to introduce. I'm like, sell yourself, sell yourself.
It's little things like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very subtle. It doesn't always have to be
Yeah.
something where you're shouting from the rooftop. So yeah, so thank you, everyone. I hope you got some use. I mean, I know this has been recorded, so for those of you who, if you do have to dash off, you can hopefully watch this back. And if anybody would like to reach out to me, I've put if you're either as a on a personal level, or if you think there's things that I can help you with within your organization, if you'd like to reach out, if you scan that QR code, you can book a discussion with me and we can talk through either, as I say, it could be something that you want to talk through about for your organization, or if you want to talk about your own personal career journey and where you might need some help, how you can build influence, how you can be really get yourself more visible within your organization, or how you can get the organization to start thinking about how they can develop their workforce, which is another challenge sometimes, then definitely I would be more than happy to help. So I'm just gonna check.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. There's so much to unpack from your session. I like the part where you spoke about cross-functional projects. I think that does stretch you. I think my question would just be, how do you really ask for those kind of projects? So are those projects better for you to ask when you feel like you don't have a lot to work on within your own position? Or do you just ask for those projects because you probably feel that you can do more than what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I think a lot of these things, it will depend on the people that you work with. Some managers are very supportive and you just ask. If you've got a manager, you will know because you know who you're working with. You'll have some managers, if they are really supportive, you just ask them and say, look, I'm really keen to learn more. I'd like to take on extra work. I remember many years ago now, but when I was trying to build my way up the ladder, what happened, how I started to develop my skills was that I was HR advisor, and then my manager was HR manager was the title, then not so much HRBP, but similar thing. But anyway, the HR manager at the time recognized that I was really keen to learn. And I sort of said, look, I'm hungry to learn. And so when we had another member of the team went off sick, long-term sick, I asked if I could take on extra work. I mean, I didn't get paid extra for it. And I think some of my colleagues thought I was mad because they said, well, you should be paid extra for that. And only you can make that call. And don't get me wrong, there's a balance. You don't want people to take too much advantage of you, but there's a balance between taking on a few things. And as a result of that, eventually they actually did pay me more and I got a promotion. And when I got my next promotion, it was a big one. Because I was able to demonstrate that I was doing all these things that I wouldn't ordinarily not have done had I not asked for them. So if you've got a manager that's supportive, that's great. If you don't have a manager that is supportive, even if they're not supportive of giving you extra things, then your best bet is to ask if, at the very least, just casually just say, as part of my personal development, would I be able to shadow a meeting and see what they say to that? So it will depend on your organization and who you're working with as to what the best approach would be. But I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful.
You're welcome. Any other last questions before we wrap up?
I had wanted to quickly, don't know if it's a comment or a question really.
Yeah, of course.
Firstly, thank you, Yvonne, for those key nuggets. So I do have a boss who's quite progressive and putting me in those spaces, and I want to make sure that I do utilize them properly. Sometimes, though, when I'm in those spaces, like you said, showing that you exhibit knowledge of whether it's policy, leadership, strategy. How do you, I guess, interpret what's going on in the meeting properly to give? Sometimes it's easy, but sometimes you can lose the thread. And even when you're sharing your opinion and you hope it lands well and it doesn't, and these are very senior people, I guess it's just how you can make sure you prepare for that. I don't know if there is any way apart from, reading material and trying to, get up to speed. I don't know if there's anything else outside of that. Yeah.
No, I think that there's, as you say, I think you've touched on one of the things I was going to say, which is reading if there's an agenda or something that you can read beforehand so you understand what's going to be discussed. One of the other things that you can do is to, if you can, again, if you've got a manager who's progressive, you could just simply ask them what are the key HR or strategic issues that you're discussing at senior team or whatever the structure is in the organization. So you'll get a little nugget from there, because it may be that they are worried about money, they're worried about retention, they're worried about how they're going to about losing staff, or I don't know, they will be worried about things. They might be, again, depending on the kind of organization that you work for, it could be that their worries are to do with their loss of business through competitors, stuff like that. So which isn't directly to do with HR, but it's understanding that. And so it's about, okay, if that's what we're struggling with, what can we do? What are there things that we can offer that are non-financial that we can use to help retain people? You will have had to have done the homework to understand what that might look like. So those are things, those might be little nuggets that you can offer, because if you have a good initiative and it takes off, it really gets you known out there. So, and one of the things I didn't talk about as such, we've talked, the main focus that I've put on today has been how you influence within. But the thing that I haven't touched on, but is all equally important, and I think Gail alluded to it, is also try and build a network. Build a network outside of your organization, because you will also learn from talking to other people, whether that's CIPD network, whether that's I mean, you guys are already in a network now. So using this network, talk to each other, find out what other people are doing, because there might be things that from there that you can take back to your organization and say, this is something that I've seen work somewhere else, and maybe it would apply to us. That's really, those are things that elevate you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's the bit that I was missing, looking at the context behind, you know, the meeting agenda, going a little bit further. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions or insights at this point?
No, if I have any more questions, I know where to find you. So I'll come knocking.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
All right, well, we'll wrap up then. So thank you, everyone. I hope you've found today useful, and there are some useful nuggets that you can take away and apply. And obviously, as Gail said, you all know where to reach me. So I wish you all a lot of success with your career journeys, and hope that you get where you want to get to in as short a time as possible. So I'm going to...
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.